What's poppin'? Today we're gonna be going over 10 steps of advice for you as a beginner to build your very first app. As you may have seen, I've been doing this series that I call Starting a Startup, where I've been documenting my whole process and my whole steps to building my first real app. And it seems like a lot of you people watching are either doing it yourselves or are looking to get into it yourself. So I thought for this 40th episode, I've been talking smack for 39 episodes straight. I might as well talk smack for another episode but give you some valuable advice in the meantime. So that is why in this video we're gonna be going over 10 steps for you to build your first app. Let's get right into it. Step number 1 is get your mind right. This seems like very simple advice, but I think it's very valuable. Building an app, it's hard stuff. It's not as easy as it may seem, but it's also not as difficult as it may seem to some of you. You can definitely learn it no matter what you are. Just look at me, I'm a meathead. I managed to build my own app. So you can definitely do it. However, it is gonna take some time and it's gonna take some patience and it's gonna be difficult along the line. So first of all, set your expectations right. You're not gonna be able to do this in a week, not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. This is gonna take a couple of months, and it's gonna take a couple of months for you to be proficient at it, and it's gonna take years to perfect it. I've been doing this for like a year and a half. I'm nowhere near perfect at it. I'm good enough to make an app now and do some advanced stuff, but I'm nowhere near perfecting what I'm doing. And since I am self-taught, I really have no clue what the industry standard is like, what you're actually meant to do. So in a lot of situations, I'm just freeballing and do whatever I think is right. But before you get into this, make sure to get your head in the game, set your mind right, and lower your expectations. This is something I always do in my personal life as well, and other parts of my life. I under-promise and I under-deliver. That is where you set the bar super low, and then you somehow manage to slide in and take out the ankles. So that already low bar that you set, surprising everyone that you managed to underperform so much. Step number 2 is to learn the fundamentals of computer science. I think this is incredibly important because it's going to be so valuable when you come to programming. And when I say learn the fundamentals of computer science, I mean learn stuff like functions, learn about different code languages, learn about the history, just learn about the general way in how code works, how it's executed on the computer, what you can do, what are some cool things people have built with it, what code languages are your favorite apps built in, etc. And just learn some principles of computer science. You can easily just go to Google, type in principles of computer science, and then just watch a 2-hour lecture, and that should be good enough for you to get started. Step 3, and this is probably more uncommon advice, but that is to learn SQL. SQL is a standard query language which is used to query data from databases, and this is the first thing which I learned back in like summer of 2019, and it's been super useful because 1, it's super easy to learn. It's like speaking English, and it will really motivate you to start coding in other languages and motivate you to keep doing more because it feels like you're making progress constantly, and we all love that. And 2, because almost certainly you will encounter SQL in the future when you code your app. A lot of databases are using SQL in order to store data, and to query this data you then need to use SQL. And a lot of your favorite apps, you actually use SQL inside them, and that's how they store the data in different tables, and they pull that data using SQL queries. So definitely learn SQL. It really doesn't take that long. I started with Code Academy. They're like skill path to learn SQL. You can also just do YouTube or whatever other way you see fit, but definitely start off with something like SQL. It's going to be a great start to your programming journey. Step 4. The 4th step of developing your very first app as a beginner is to decide whether you want to do native or cross-platform programming. Native programming is where you do programming for specifically one device. For example, you can do either iOS or you can do either Android. Windows, what's that? No one cares about that, right? And that is where you'll make a specific app that's dedicated to iOS, or you'll make a specific app that's dedicated to Android with that particular code base. If you decide to go native, that means you'll either make Android apps or you'll make iOS apps exclusively. There's no overlap there. Of course, if you learn one, it's probably going to be easier to learn the other one, but they're 2 different languages and you're going to need to learn 2 different things in order to build 2 separate apps. I don't know why I'm holding up 4 in order to learn native programming. Cross-platform, on the other hand, is where you have one code base, but you're able to distribute that or refactor that code in order for that to work on iOS or Android. So one code base will work on 2 platforms. And if you, like me, wondered why the hell would I not choose cross-platform if I can do both with one? Hold your horses, it's not that simple. Native programming typically tends to have better performance, it tends to be more secure, it's typically more intuitive for the user of that particular OS, and it allows access to the full features of that device, such as the microphone, Face ID, all that good stuff. Cross-platform, on the other hand, has some other advantages. So for example, the code is reusable. You can code on one platform and then apply it to another platform. It reduces cost because it takes less time and fewer developers if you're planning to have a developer team for your app in the future, but also time is money, remember that. Faster development times, broader reach since you can distribute your app on 2 platforms, and brand consistency because you'll be doing the same code for both platforms, so your brand will be the same across both platforms. Number 5, after you've decided if you want to go native or cross-platform, is to pick a programming language. And again, this will depend heavily on step 4 if you decide to go native or if you decide to go cross-platform. If you decide to go native, it will depend heavily on if you want to make an iOS app or if you want to make an Android app. If you want to make an Android app, you'll need to learn Kotlin. Kotlin is a statically typed multi-purpose language from 2011 that is built by JetBrains, and it's used for Android apps exclusively, as well as some other stuff. I know, don't come at me in the comments, okay? If you decide to go Apple, you will need to learn Swift. Swift is a compiled general purpose programming language similar to C, developed by Apple, and this is what you'll need to learn if you want to make iOS apps, and you can also use it to make Mac OS apps in the future. If you choose the cross-platform route, there are a plethora. Anyway, how's that for a fancy vocabulary? Of different languages that you can choose. For example, firstly, there's a very popular one called JavaScript. I don't know if you've heard of it, probably you have. JavaScript uses a framework called React Native in order to build cross-purpose apps where you build the app in React Native and you can compile it to fit on either Android or on iOS. JavaScript and React Native are one of the most popular combos in the industry. So there's basically infinite advice, an infinite number of people you can ask for advice in order to help you with your app, and there are so many resources online. Another option is Dart and Flutter. So Dart is a programming language developed by Google, and Flutter is a framework developed by Google where you use Flutter in order to make apps for both iOS and Android at the same time. This is what I use for my app, and this is what I decided to go with because I thought it sounded cool, and why not stick out from the crowd a little bit, right? It is definitely an up-and-coming language and framework, and there's definitely so much more advice now in 2022 than it was in 2020 when I started programming with Dart, but it's still not as well documented as JavaScript and React Native, and there aren't as many tutorials, etc. Third option that I wanted to highlight is Python and Kiwi. Python is probably one of the most easy language to learn, and it's also one of the most popular for other things such as data science. I actually used it a little bit in my job. I don't really know too much about this, so I can't say too much. All I know is that Python is easy to learn, it's well documented, and you can do a lot of things. However, the Kiwi apps I've seen don't look too good. I don't know if you know any popular apps that were made with Kiwi and Python, but I don't, and I don't think it's as good as Dart or JavaScript if you want to build an actual app. However, if you're just playing around and you want to make a functional app that maybe doesn't look as good, then definitely this could be something for you to check out. So, once you've decided if you want to go native cross-platform and then picked your language, the next step is to code along to 2 or 3 full-length tutorials. And when I say full-length tutorials, I mean one that could be up to 8 hours long, where you actually go from scratch. You do the whole process and then you end up with a finished app. There are a lot of these on YouTube where geniuses have put together 8-hour sessions or where they just go from scratch to a functional app and they show you every single step along the way. What I did was that I probably picked 3 of these and I just coded along. I changed some stuff, adapted it to myself just to show that I could do it or teach myself how to do it. But it's a really good way for you to learn and to get an introduction on how to set everything up, but then also how the general language works. Then, number 7, the 7th step is to just go wild. At this point, just make everything you can think of. You can wake up in the middle of the night and think of a way to measure the saltiness of hot dogs in your local area and just try build an app on that. Obviously, you're not going to manage to do it the first couple of times, but the point here is just try. Do whatever, pick whatever you can, just try it. There's so much stuff on Stack Overflow, for example, where you can just come up with your idea, Google how to do it, find the code, adapt it to your idea, and then just roll with it. I think I built so many useless apps in the beginning. I was just doing country maps, I was doing journals, I was just doing everything I could possibly think of, and I think this helped me a lot in terms of learning what I wanted to do. And this is important to go to this step and don't get stuck in the tutorial jungle, because if you just keep on doing tutorials, you're not going to be able to do stuff by yourself. You're just going to be able to follow along, but you need to first watch a tutorial and then move on to this go wild step in order so that you can make your own stuff and learn on the way. So at this point, whatever you come up with, don't be afraid to just go with it and just make something, even if it's just for a 5-minute little code session and you don't ever look at the app again. Or it doesn't even need to be a fully complete app. It can just be a page or 2 pages where you want to test if you can do an animation from a button to another page, etc. You are the decider. Let your imagination go wild here. Tip number 8, and this part is to structure how you program your app. This is something which I didn't do for the first couple of ones that I built. I just built and I just coded. However, it's gonna help you so much if you have a structure and if you have a plan for everything that your app needs to contain, everything you're dependent on, all of the frameworks that you're gonna use, etc. And also it's gonna help you a lot if you have a UI design to begin with, so that you're not just freeballing it as you go, but rather you have a set structure and a set design that you're following while you're coding, so that you actually end up with a final result that you're happy with and that looks good and works and has the initial functions that you planned out for your app to have. Use a programming IDE with some of these features like Visual Studio Code, for example, where you can have plugins, etc. for this. And also make sure to use a task management software like Jira. I know I made a video about this in the past, about the software that I use for this app. Jira was one of them. And just make sure that you structure how you approach your programming, and also so that you can follow this along and you can be consistent with how you do it. Tip number 9 is to test your app frequently. Whether this just be putting this onto your phone and not just a simulator on your computer, but test your app as much as you can so that you can get a feel for what it's like using it in the real world, and also get feedback from other testers who will have valuable real life input to your app and not just your biased opinion. This is something which helped me a lot when I'm doing this whole starting a startup. I've done one alpha test and one beta test now at this point, and I've gotten so much valuable feedback which I would never think about from the beginning by myself. So this is definitely going to help you so much when you're planning out what functions do I need to add to my app, what do I need to remove, what looks good, what doesn't look good, what works, what are the bugs. It is impossible to find all that stuff by yourself, and it's impossible to find all that stuff while just using your simulator. So get the app onto your phone, get it in your hands with your friends, your own hands, and just test it. Test it as much as you can. Step and tip number 10 is to back everything up. This is a mistake which I made when I made my first app. I developed a whole app called Sauce, which was a cocktail app, great for your liver, where you could just get a lot of cocktail recipes and then you could get step-by-step instructions on how to make that cocktail depending on what ingredients you had. However, this summer my old computer just died, fried completely. It was just a goner. On there I had all of my code files for this Sauce app, and I could never recover it because it was not backed up to the cloud, it was not on GitHub, it was not on anything. So I suggest that whatever you build, whatever you do, back that up into the cloud and maybe on an external hard drive as well. GitHub is great for this, not only in case your computer crashes, but also in case you want to go back to previous versions if you end up messing anything up. I've done this many times where I, for example, download a new dependency, then there's not something which is incompatible, then there's just error messages all over the place and I have no clue how to figure out how to solve it. So what I do then is I just go back to the previous version of the app that I have in GitHub and I just start over. So whatever you do, make sure that when you start coding on the actual app, back it up. This doesn't really apply to the stuff which you're just coding to learn, but when you actually want to build an app, make sure that everything you do is documented and backed up. So that is pretty much it. Please keep in mind that this is based on my opinion. I have no education in this. I'm like a business major, if that even counts as a major. Don't take this as facts, take this as advice rather, and feel free to disagree. If there's something which you'd like to add, please add it in the comments for people who are looking to build their own app. If you have done it yourself, you bloody legend. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below, it helps my channel out, and please follow along my journey of starting a startup. Like I said, this is episode 40, so if you're just new here now, there's a lot of you catching up for you to do. If you like this whole journey and the whole idea of starting a startup, please subscribe down below, hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I upload these videos. And without further ado, thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck on your app making journey, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.